We live in an era marked by a strange contradiction. We have never been so connected and, at the same time, so lost. People go about their routines, post smiling photos, meet deadlines, respond to messages, produce, but internally, something is not right. A persistent feeling of emptiness, a diffuse anguish, a fatigue that cannot be explained solely by physical tiredness. The modern individual, even surrounded by stimuli, lives an inner silence that screams. And the most frightening thing is that this widespread malaise does not stem from great external catastrophes such as wars or natural disasters. It arises precisely from the absence of visible ruptures. It emerges in the everyday life that repeats without questioning, in the accelerated routine that does not allow for pauses. It emerges in the constant pressure to be productive, successful, and happy. For many, this feeling of being lost is treated as a weakness, as if it were a personal error, an individual failure to adapt to the world. But, in fact, it may be the most lucid symptom of all. Feeling lost today can mean being awake in a world that has fallen asleep amid algorithms, performance metrics, and empty promises of progress. The contemporary individual does not live a crisis due to a lack of options. They live a crisis because there are too many options, too many distractions, too much information, too many demands. And in the midst of all this, they lose the essential, the connection with themselves, with the present, with the most basic sense of being alive. It is within this scenario that the ideas of Albert Camus resonate powerfully once again. Camus, a 20th century Algerian philosopher and writer, lived in a time of evident collapse. World wars, genocides, the nuclear threat. His generation witnessed the bankruptcy of the grand promises of Western civilization. And in the face of all this, Camus posed a brutally simple question. Is life still worth living? This was not a theoretical question. It was a matter of existential survival, moral reference. It was a devastating scenario, where old values no longer served, and new ones had yet to be born. It was in this context that Camus coined his central thesis, the absurd. The absurd, for Camus, is not an attribute of the world itself, but arises from the confrontation between the human need to find meaning and the universe's mute indifference. Human beings yearn for order, for answers, for a logic that justifies their pain and existence. But the world responds with silence. And it is from this confrontation that the feeling of absurdity emerges, a deep discomfort, a crack in the soul that can no longer be ignored. For a long time, it was thought that this type of nihilism was an exclusive characteristic of extreme times, such as wars or social collapses. But what we are experiencing today is a new form of absurdity, much more subtle and therefore more dangerous. Liquid modernity, as Zygmunt Bauman would say, has dissolved the structures that once supported our identities: religion, community, ideologies, family. In their place, we have a constant promise of individual freedom and self-construction. This resembles a sentence of loneliness and continuous self-exploration. We live in a time where everything is possible, but nothing is certain. Where all doors are open, but no one knows where to go. Where we have access to all kinds of information, but we cannot transform it into wisdom. This abundance of possibilities, far from liberating, paralyzes. And the constant demand to be someone in a world that no longer offers clear references turns into a corrosive anguish. The experience of absurdity today is no longer just in the face of evident pain, but in the repetitive banality, the feeling of being alive without being present, of waking up every day with a slight, nameless despair. Moreover, the language of the absurd has taken on new forms. It is no longer a cry of revolt against a cruel world, but a generalized apathy in the face of a soulless world. It is the employee who mechanically fulfills their shift without knowing why. It is the student who wonders what the point of studying is for a future that seems increasingly unstable. It is the young person who
despair or revolt. In the next part, we will understand how Camus transforms the feeling of absurdity not into defeat, but into a starting point. A silent call for a type of revolt that begins not with screams, but with presence. The most dangerous war of our time is not fought with weapons or armies, but with distractions. The enemy is not visible, has no face, and precisely because of that, it is so effective. It operates in silence, in the glow of screens, in the sounds of notifications, in the constant sense of urgency that keeps us on alert, even when nothing real is happening. It is a war against our presence, a war we are losing every day, even without realizing it. Camus said that human beings need to experience the world directly, to feel the sun on their skin, hear the wind, touch reality with their own senses, to regain some sense of belonging to existence. But we live in a society where direct experience is being replaced by carefully constructed simulations. The feed has become more real than the face. External validation has become more important than self-knowledge. The now has been replaced by the next. The logic of digital acceleration has devastating effects on the human psyche. We have never been so stimulated, and at the same time so empty. We jump from one task to another, from one video to the next, from one browser tab to 3 more, without ever really committing to anything. We live in draft mode, in incomplete versions of ourselves. Attention, which should be an act of presence, has been hijacked by systems that monetize our time, our anxiety, and our need for meaning. It is not just a technology addiction. It is a new architecture of reality, where everything is designed to keep you entertained, but never awake. Social media has turned our lives into performance showcases, where we are at the same time both product and spectator. We come to exist not by what we feel, but by what we show. Identity fragments, intimacy disappears, and in place of depth, the addictive superficiality of instant content takes over. This digital structure, which promises connection, has in practice produced isolation. Conversations become shallower. Listening is lost. The pause, which was a space for reflection, is now immediately filled with stimulation. Now, with wholeness, with presence, with truth. There can be no revolt without presence. There can be no freedom without awareness of the moment. But Camus does not stop at the diagnosis. He offers us a path, a silent and profound response to absurdity and alienation. And this response is not theoretical nor ideological. It is experiential. And it begins with a choice between despair and revolt. In the face of the absurdity of existence, Albert Camus did not offer comfort. He did not try to soften reality with metaphysical promises, religious dogmas, or empty optimism. On the contrary, he started from the harshest premise. The world makes no sense. And instead of fleeing from this realization, he proposed that we confront it with lucidity and courage. For Camus, the awareness of the absurd is not the end. It is the starting point. But once you realize that life has no intrinsic purpose, that no salvation will come from outside, that all certainty is a fragile construction, what remains? According to him, 2 possibilities arise: despair or revolt. Despair is silent resignation, internal collapse. It is the act of retreating, even if the body continues to move. It is the subject who lives mechanically, who breathes out of obligation,
who is content with mere survival, but no longer truly lives. In his work, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus discusses the total abandonment of the will to live, not only as an extreme act, but as an existential stance. The other option is revolt. But beware for Camus. Revolting against the absurd does not mean rebelling violently or destroying the external world. Revolt is intimate, silent, profound. It is an act of affirmation of life, even knowing that it is finite, uncertain, and devoid of objective justification. It is saying yes to existence, not because it makes sense, but precisely because it does not. Revolt is living despite the absurd, or perhaps because of it. It is here that Camus' philosophy gains its tragic beauty. He does not invite us to flee from existential pain, but to inhabit it with dignity. The Camusian rebel is one who, even aware of the farce of ready-made,
was paradoxically a radical humanist. He believed in the human capacity to create meaning where no given meaning exists, to live with awareness, to commit to life even when it seems empty, to say, I know that the universe is indifferent, but I am not. This is the central dilemma that Camus presents to us. Either we succumb to emptiness and lose ourselves in despair, or we choose revolt, a silent but deeply active revolt that begins the moment we decide to be truly present in our own existence. But this presence is not just a state of mind. It demands something that has become exceedingly rare in today's world: to slow down. And it is precisely this that Camus proposes as a practical form of resistance, a deliberate return to the natural rhythm of life. Slow down, a simple word, but one that sounds almost heretical in the modern world. In a society built on the logic of productivity, speed, and constant optimization, stopping is seen as waste. Resting has become synonymous with weakness. Living slowly is interpreted as a lack of ambition. Time today is no longer lived. It is managed, fragmented into goals, tasks, deadlines, and performance metrics. But Camus, with his disconcerting lucidity, proposes exactly the opposite: to slow down as an act of revolt, as a radical gesture of reconnection with the real. The Camusian revolt does not manifest in fiery speeches or noisy protests. It begins in the most intimate, in the decision to experience life directly, sensorially, immediately. For Camus, life finds its value not in grand redemptive narratives, but in small, concrete experiences. The warmth of the sun on your face, the sound of the sea, a walk without destination, the silent beauty of an unplanned moment. These moments, as simple as they are profound, have the power to pull us out of the stupor that speed places us in. Accelerated time depersonalizes. It does not allow for reflection, contemplation, presence. You wake up and you're already late. You eat while answering emails. You walk with headphones canceling the world around you. Everything is urgent. Everything is for yesterday. And in this urgency, the human being always going somewhere, even without knowing where, because what matters, apparently, is not to stop. Camus offers us another logic, the logic of presence. To be present is to resist. It is to create a gap in the unbroken flow of alienation. It is to say, I am not just an exploitable resource, and this choice, however small it may seem, has immense implications. It changes the way you relate to time, to others, to the very meaning of existence. Because when you slow down, something extraordinary happens. You begin to perceive, and in perception, the possibility of transformation is born. It is in this space of conscious slowness that beauty reveals itself, and Camus deeply believed in beauty as resistance. He spoke of real, concrete, tangible beauty, the beauty of being alive, even amidst chaos, the beauty of an ordinary afternoon, of a sincere conversation.
of a creation made by hand. To slow down, therefore, is to allow oneself to exist outside the logic of the machine. It is to reclaim human time within mechanical time. And this is not passivity. This is rebellion, the most silent and perhaps the most transformative of all. But accepting slowness as a way of life also implies accepting something even more challenging: the absence of guarantees. Because by stepping out of autopilot, we confront the raw truth of existence. It promises nothing. And it is precisely here that Camus leads us to his most liberating idea. Freedom is born when we accept the absurd in its entirety. Accepting the absurd is accepting that life has no guaranteed external purpose, that the universe owes you no explanations, that things happen and often make no sense at all. This realization seems desperate to many, but Camus shows us that it can actually be profoundly liberating. Because by abandoning the need to justify existence with grand narratives, you free yourself from the obligation to get somewhere. You begin, finally, to live. The freedom that arises from accepting the absurd is not libertinism, nor indifference. It is responsibility. Because if there is no given meaning, then it is up to you to be more real. The right to be whole, to feel everything, the pain, the beauty, the fatigue, the joy. Without needing a higher reason to validate your experience, you feel, and that is enough. This is the point at which the absurd transforms. It ceases to be an enemy to be defeated and becomes a landscape to be inhabited. When you accept that meaning will not come from outside, you stop waiting. And when you stop waiting, you begin to perceive. And by perceiving, you start to create a way of living that is more authentic, more present, more yours. And here lies the most powerful paradox of Camus' philosophy. It is precisely when we abandon the search for a great purpose that we open ourselves to the miracle of the moment. It is when we stop demanding that life reward us that we begin to receive what it has always offered: the chance to be here, truly. Feeling lost is not a failure. It is not a sign of weakness or dysfunction. It is, in fact, a symptom of lucidity. In a world where so many live anesthetized by speed, superficiality, and the relentless pursuit of distraction, those who feel the void are, paradoxically, closer to the truth. Because seeing the absurd is recognizing that something is not right. And that is an act of consciousness, a sign that you are alive. Albert Camus did not write to console. He wrote to awaken. And awakening often hurts, because it involves looking at life without the filters that culture imposes, without the motivational cliches that mask anguish, without the easy shortcuts of self-help. Awakening is realizing that the world will not give you guarantees, that there may not be a grand plan waiting for you. But it is also discovering that, despite this, or precisely because of it, life can be extraordinary. You are not broken. You are in touch with a layer of reality that many avoid. You are perceiving the fragility of existence, the impermanence of everything, the inconsistency of the promises made to you. This is not the end of the road. It is the beginning. Because only those who see themselves without ground truly begin to build with their own feet. It is at this moment that true freedom is born, that does not impose itself from the outside, but emerges from within, from the way you live each moment. Not as one who awaits a revelation, but as one who decides that being here is already enough. And if you have made it this far, you may also be in this process of awakening. You may be rediscovering the beauty of what cannot be explained, the depth of what can only be felt. If this video made sense to you, or even if it caused you discomfort, write in the comments. Say, "I am waking up." Not for others to see you,
but so that you can hear your own voice amidst the noise. You are not alone, and even if the world insists on distracting you, there will always be a space of silence where the truth can still be felt. And it is in this space, in this small gap in the absurd, that something truly human begins.